Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios, it's time for Women in Motion. Brought to you by WBEC West. Join forces, succeed together. Now, here's your host.
Lee Kantor here, another episode of Women in Motion, and this is going to be a good one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, Webeck West. Without them, we couldn't be sharing these important stories. Today on Women in Motion, we have Valerie Crafton with VALConsultants. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
I am so excited to learn what you're up to. Tell us about VALConsultants.
Well, VALConsultants was really born out of my experience of navigating inefficiencies in large-scale projects and the frustration of seeing some mistakes repeated due to siloed data and a resistance to overall change. And what I saw, this critical gap in the industry, it was really driven by a lack of real-time visibility. People were bringing technology in, but they were trying to make the technology fit something they didn't fit the problem, rather than understanding their problem's root causes and then finding a tailored solution to fit that. And there really was more of a reactive approach rather than a proactive approach in managing projects. So my goal was to really create a consultancy that not only solves those problems, but empowers businesses to adopt innovative methods and thrive in a rapidly evolving environment.
Now, at first, were you working for another firm and then you decided to go off on your own, or were you always kind of on your own?
Yes. So I have spent about half of my career in the field building and working in construction. So I bring that dirt to delivery experience, and I recruit and bring team members on with similar experience because I really believe that helps us fast forward our clients to their future state. But yeah, we spent half of our time in the field on general contractor side, eventually ending up on the owner side, representing owners, working directly for Google, Microsoft, Intel, for example, and really starting to see on the picture from both sides of the fence. And that really helped me develop what I knew was going to be needed as an improved consultancy.
And then your focus is in the construction industry?
Yeah, all construction, high tech, representing owners, contractors, in creating project controls, lean project controls, I should say, preparing them to get their data organized so they can take on AI as an integration to their business, and then ultimately providing project control resources as well, like cost managers and risk managers.
Now, you mentioned some mistakes that folks make, or maybe some challenges they have when they implement, I guess, large tech solutions. I guess they're buying something that maybe they don't really understand how to holistically integrate it into their organization, and you help them in that area as well?
Yeah, so I start off with doing a forensic study that allows me to understand their pain point at a deeper level. For example, I have a story about technology that was actually brought in, and they were claiming that through this technology, they were able to get visibility to red flags that their schedule was behind and that they could give them enough time to recoup that schedule. Well, my question really is, why were you behind on the schedule in the first place? And that got you into that situation. So we're not really thinking about our root causes. We're thinking about just basically Band-Aids that fix broken bones. And that isn't going to support long-term adoption of technology.
Now, is that pretty common that people are just kind of putting out fires or triaging whatever is the thing that's happening right at the moment, rather than kind of going a few layers deep to see what is causing these things to happen in the first place?
Shockingly. I mean, really, it shocks me sometimes because I'm always surrounded by some of the smartest people in the world, but for some reason, you'll have an entire team who doesn't really see the root cause to the problem. It's right there in front of their faces. They'll even have identified it in risk logs and so forth, but they don't see it as a risk, as an actual root cause to their pain points. So what happens is they get to an end, and then they find they're like, oh, the schedule was the problem. I'm like, no, the schedule was back to your problem. Let's talk about what was the problem. Oh, well, let's go back to the beginning. Well, look here, you identified very early on that you had a contractor who had never built your type of project before, had never worked in that market. And they were doing design build. They were supposed to have had, so many percentage procured contracts completed. And that's where it really began within those first few months, right? And the fact that the entire team couldn't even see that, and there was no real risk program set up that allowed them to escalate risk in a way to get in front of it. You fast forward, they were 2 years late. So it's interesting that when we get to end of the projects, what I've observed is they will sit there, they'll document it in a lessons learned, but it will die on the desktop, or it will die in that project share folder, but nothing gets cycled back to the beginning so that we can implement it. No, we just keep moving forward to the next emergency. We don't actually stop and pause and think about what we've learned and how can we make sure that it doesn't happen again.
It sounds like one domino falls that triggers 100 other dominoes, and they're just looking at the last domino and they don't want to understand what caused the first one to fall.
Sometimes it's a lot of I don't want to call them excuses, but reasons. And people genuinely believe it's because I'm resource constrained. I am too busy. I have teams who are green and have skill gaps. And I was like, oh, okay, well, and that's what I do is I come in and let's talk about what you think your pain points are. And it's never, I don't think, and from my discovery, it's not typically about the people. It ends up being more about the fact that there's misalignment between the cross-functional teams, or they've grown so fast as a business that they haven't really, what worked when the teams were very small and everybody communicated and knew what to do. And then suddenly fast forward, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you've grown so fast. And no one really spent the time to actually document and say, okay, here is our best in class standard operating procedures. They forget governance along the way. And there's no continuous improvement built into the fabric of the culture or those processes.
Now, if an organization lacks that kind of self-awareness to kind of go back and examine these things, what are the symptoms that they're having that, motivate them to contact you and your team? Because it seems like that what you're doing is trying to get to the heart of the things, and they may not have the self-awareness to see it themselves. So what would inspire them to contact you?
Likely you're starting to see resource turnover. You're starting to see a loss of market share. People will, if you can't stand there and say why I'm losing money, why I'm not meeting schedules, and really get to be able to identify a root cause to that, then you're you're repeating the same mistakes over and over and over. Those are a lot of the symptoms.
So when the leadership team is hearing kind of the same excuses over and over, that's a signal that, hey, maybe we need some fresh eyes on this, and let's call VALConsultants.
That's right. Call VALC. Yeah, because when I come in, I'm looking at more than just the pain point itself. I will look upstream and downstream, end to end, because at the end of the day, it goes back to a connection of handshakes. I like to say that I no longer build projects, I build bridges between silos. And so a lot of times it's because we don't have all of the right people a part of the conversation upstream. And the folks downstream are impacted. And so the folks downstream have these pain points of things that are happening. And again, it's just processes and goals that work against each other inside the corporation. Also building a culture where it's okay to, rather than beat your people up, but celebrate that you're willing to share your lesson and teach it to others. Because I've watched it a dozen times where, people are afraid. They won't even put their name next to the lessons learned because they're afraid of the backlash. They don't want to share that. But it's not just lessons learned, but it's opportunities to improve, right? It's an opportunity to improve, but it's not just negative things, it's positive things. So if you don't even have the negative stuff tracked, what about the good things that are happening on one site or one project that could be easily shared? So if you're implementing the right thing and you've got the right handshake approach in, and it's set up with the correct escalation, and it allows you to instantaneously share with other teams and other projects anywhere in the world, that is when you start seeing a real difference. I mean, if you think about your portfolio and having something like this and put in place, and we only impact less than 1%, I promise you that's in the millions of dollars. And I've done this type of analysis before, and actually hold a green belt record on cost savings, where just impacting 1% of a major corporation saved them $1.623 billion that year. So it can be a huge, I know it ended up being more, but it can be a huge to the bottom line, not to mention the fact that you are now recouping lost opportunity that you weren't tracking before. And that could be market share.
Now, it seems when you say it, this handshake approach where, we're just two adults having a conversation and I'm sharing and I'm being vulnerable and, hey, this didn't work out and I want everybody to know it and we can all learn from it. That sounds good in a conversation, but when it's human beings and it's their jobs on the line, like you mentioned the word culture earlier, if you don't have a culture of trust and that it's okay to take risks and make mistakes and share and learn, you're going to have a difficult time, I would imagine, implementing something like this, because this requires trust and vulnerability, and not everybody signs up for that.
It really does require that it comes from the top down, really driven by the leadership, and pushing it all the way down to the bottom, because otherwise it doesn't get adopted. It takes time to get it a part of the fabric, but I've found that when I brought all the teams in to make them a part of the conversation, I ensure the handshake approach is implemented, not just between human to human, project to project, stage gate to stage gate, but also between human and technology to technology. That's where, most consultants will stop short of just looking at, okay, here's a solution for you. But I'm like, no, I want a solution that will impact your entire business and bring them together as one unit, not something that just is a quick fix and it feels good for today.
Now, when you're talking to leaders, do they have that kind of long-term view? I know a lot of them give lip service to it, but a lot of folks just want that quick fix and get it off my plate and move on. Like, I know it's hard to find those best fit clients, but I'm sure they're out there, but it's not everybody, is it?
It's not. I mean, people have to be prepared for this. They have to have a growth mindset. You have to be willing to forward think. Change is hard. It's hard for a lot of folks. But at the end of the day, what I've discovered is everybody wants to change, but you just got to bring them into the conversation, because everyone's perspective actually does matter. They're going to be standing and because the reason why you bring someone from the outside in is because if you try to do it inside, there's a lot of unconscious bias that gets applied, right? You want to make sure your department's taken care of at the end of the day. And I don't think it's intentional. It's unconscious. You want someone who's, like you said, it's fresh eyes, someone who's actually walked in their shoes, knows where they've been and knows where they want to go. And so that way we can easily connect the dots. You don't have to spend a lot of time explaining to me what your job is, because I've been there and done that. I've experienced these same pain points. Now let's talk about how this pain point is working in your department. So it's hard to implement, but we're really, really good about it. We create a lot of excitement. And at the end of the day, everybody wants to change, and adoption is at levels. By the time we're done with our forensic studies, usually everybody is bought in. I would say at least 95% of them.
And then what trends are you seeing? We're talking all the time about AI. How has that impacted the construction industry, and how do you help your clients kind of get ready for this chaotic future that is rapidly approaching, if not it's already here in a lot of cases?
Yeah, it is definitely already here, and it's been here for 200 years, which is really interesting. But it's just become very popular. And the thing that most people are concerned about is it replacing their jobs. Well, one of our biggest risks in the industry is the fact that we don't have enough skilled labor. And humans are not going to be eliminated. We actually need the combination of AI and human to actually make it all work. And where my consultant firm comes in and helps them get ready for that, it's really about organizing your data in a way so that when you feed the machine, which we call machine learning, when you're feeding that machine and it's learning from the data, it's not learning the wrong stuff. Right. And what happens is then AI spits out the report that gives you a false sense of security. You want to make sure that your data is organized in a way that is actually going to give you actionable insights, that it really allows you to have a foundational approach and end up enabling you to make smarter business decisions. Right? That's going to improve your project outcome. It's going to allow you to create repeatability long term. And AI is so great at taking a lot of data, and humans aren't great at that, taking a lot of data and actually analyzing it and spitting out information. Where the human comes in, and that is we need people who are used to looking at that data to understand that, hey, there was an outlier in this data. We should probably remove that and make sure we categorize our data and clean it up so that only the quality data is ending up in the results. So whether, the financial field and medical fields are way, way ahead of the curve on this, and they're just light years ahead of us. But the construction field, it is such a great way to understand your data, understand where to focus your resources when you are already thin on resources. It's a great way to set up a continuous learning when you have folks you need to upskill very quickly, right? So it has so many opportunities that allow you to do more with less. It is not taking away your job because we still need the human element to it.
But it does require you to upskill in some areas, right? Like it's difficult for you to just show up the way you are and then leverage this technology.
Yes. Yeah, you definitely do need, and that's what's nice about it is it does create jobs too at the same time, right? Just like when social media came on board, you suddenly had to have a social media manager. It's kind of like that.
Right. So I'm not saying that it requires some earth-shattering, skill set, but it requires some new skills, or maybe some people that weren't doing this kind of work now are the perfect people to be doing this kind of work because their skills map to what's needed.
Absolutely. There's a ton of transferable skill there. And like I said, it's about the people who's used to reviewing that data, being able to see, you read between the lines, right? And so we can't just take it for face value. We need to make sure that the results that we're looking at are real, actionable results. And the folks who used to do all of this manually, we still need them to evaluate it to make sure it's spitting out accurate information.
Right. I think people get kind of mesmerized at the speed in which it can find patterns or it can find anomalies and it can find things. But if you don't have good data to begin with, all of that's kind of meaningless.
Absolutely meaningless. So that is where you get, what do they call it? Trying to think of the hallucinations.
The hallucinations, right.
Yeah, you get the hallucination data where what's really interesting is AI was built on a lot of news reports. So when you ask it to evaluate a news report, it does a really great job. But something more simple like a recipe, it actually does a terrible job because there's not very much data it was trained on to understand recipes. So it just goes back to how we code it, how we train it, and the information that we're feeding it. And the more it learns, the better it will get. But you don't want to build that learning on bad data.
Right. That's why you need somebody on your team that has experience in kind of giving it the data it needs to be effective and to get you to where you want to go, not to where the machine wants to go.
That's right. That's right. So I was speaking with a client the other day, and we were talking about how we can actually apply a quantifiable value to each of their risks and their cost and change management database wasn't categorized. Nowhere in the system could I determine what was the common trend for changes or why cost overruns were happening. There was zero categorization to it or coding structure that helped me kind of understand where my trends were with changes and cost overruns. And so that was just going back and saying, okay, well, how can we reconfigure this database to then maybe go back a year and start putting them into certain categories, feed that to the machine and see what the results are. Then you might have to make a couple of adjustments, but you get it right when you first implement it. And next thing you know, you start seeing trends that you can really turn things around and make those changes mitigated before they happen.
Yeah, that's where, there's so much possibilities. And to have somebody like you on the team helping, it could really accelerate growth in ways they can't even imagine.
Goodness, it is really exciting times right now. And understanding the history and being able to even come in and train teams and given the history of AI and how it all works is very exciting for me. I love doing it. And, having the AI business integrator certification through MIT, it has just been a very useful learning that my team brings to corporations to help kind of understand where's it been, where's it going, what can it do, what can it not do, and how do you need to get ready for it, and then supporting them on that readiness.
Now, why was it important for you to become part of the WeBank West community? What did you anticipate getting out of it, and what have you gotten out of it?
Oh, my goodness. So the WeBank West, getting the women-owned certification has just been huge. It aligned me with a lot of corporations who are looking to bring in diverse teams. And interesting enough, they did a study at MIT and they talked about how a more diverse team created a smarter overall group. And so corporations are taking that very seriously right now, and they're looking for those certifications. So it is amazing to have that certification and be recognized on that level. Not to mention the ladies that I'm surrounded by who are like-minded, who are going through some of the similar things I have or I've already gone through as a business owner. Being able to share those experiences back and forth and introduce each other to opportunities and teaming, it is not, and let me just add to the top of the plan is all of the free education I get through WeBank has been top notch, absolutely top notch. I knew I was going to be a great CEO, but WeBank took me to the next level on what that meant.
So what's next for your firm?
Incredibly exciting for us. We plan to expand our partnerships, embrace more AI-driven tools, of course, develop proprietary solutions that push boundaries of what project controls can achieve. And this includes, becoming partners with, technology like Smartsheet, where I'm able to build data tracking tools specific to clients' needs. And as we grow and focus remains on delivering tailored, innovative solutions while deepening our impact in our community and outreach with STEM advocacy. So my vision for VALC is not only to set industry benchmarks, but to go and inspire a new generation to see the possibilities of construction, tech, and beyond to drive impacts globally.
So if somebody wants to learn more, have a more substantive conversation with you or somebody on the team, what's the website? What's the best way to connect?
Yes, you can reach out to my website is www.VALConsultants, VALconsultants.com, or you can reach me at VALC@VALConsultants.
Well, Valerie, thank you so much for sharing your story. You're doing important work, and we appreciate you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you too. Thank you so much.
All right, this is Lee Kantor. We'll see you all next time on Women in Motion.